President Biden sat down with Israeli President Isaac Herzog Tuesday, and during the meeting, Herzog praised Biden for his ongoing support of Israel since the war broke out with Hamas last year.
I'm here on behalf of the people of Israel and the nation of Israel and the state of Israel to say to you, Mr. President, thank you very much. You've been an incredible friend of Israel and the Jewish people for decades, and we will never forget, ever in history, how you stood up with us in our darkest hour, which became our finest hour.
CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more on the leaders' meeting from Tel Aviv.
Presidents Herzog and Biden discussed several things in today's meeting: the ongoing attacks from Hezbollah in the north of Israel, the Israeli hostages who remain imprisoned in Gaza, and Iran, which is a preoccupation of this Israeli administration. In fact, President Herzog called it the empire of evil. President Biden reiterated that his commitment to Israel is, quote, ironclad. But this meeting occurred against the backdrop of a U.S. warning to Israel that it has to let a lot more aid into the Gaza Strip or face reductions in military aid from the United States. The U.S. had asked that 350 aid trucks a day be let into the Strip, but the Israelis have been averaging less than half that. Very recently, Israel has made some effort to scale up the aid, but NGOs say that it hasn't met most of the American targets. Nevertheless, Reuters is reporting that U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met a close confidant of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's today, and Secretary Blinken has just announced that the U.S. will not change U.S. military aid levels to Israel for now, in spite of its noncompliance. Back to you.
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joins us now. Willie, earlier, families of Israeli hostages were asked how they felt about the Biden administration's efforts to secure the safe return of hostages in Gaza. Let's watch.
I would give the Biden administration an A+ on effort and relationship with the families, but at the end of the line, we're still here after 400 days. So they have not succeeded in delivering what they should, which is bringing back U.S. hostages out of Gaza.
What's the sense of optimism in the White House for a ceasefire and hostage deal?
Hey there, Lindsay. Good to be with you. Well, President Biden and officials here at the White House continue to work to come to that hostage deal, but it remains stalled for the most part. Remember, it was just days ago that Qatar announced that it would essentially pause its mediation efforts between Israel and Hamas. They have been host to these talks, these ongoing talks between Hamas, which the U.S. considers a terrorist organization, the Israelis and the Americans. Egypt has been involved in those negotiations as well. But the president is still working the phones, working his in-person relationships as he did today with Herzog of Israel, trying to come to some type of solution to bring these hostages home. I also note I was there talking to the families of these hostages that have been held by Hamas in Gaza. I asked, have any of them heard or reached out to the Trump administration, the incoming president-elect's team? And they essentially said that they want President-elect Trump, they want his team to be in touch with the Biden administration, essentially to pass the baton, so to speak, in terms of these ongoing talks and negotiations if it doesn't pan out and if the result that they want doesn't happen before President Biden leaves office in January.
And President-elect Trump will be at the White House on Wednesday. What do we know about that meeting? What can we expect from it?
Yeah, Lindsay, to be a fly on the wall between these two men. There's no love lost, of course, between President Biden and President-elect Trump. They have said not so many good things about each other over the years, but President Biden will offer that olive branch, so to speak, in terms of that peaceful transfer of power. That's what the president, White House officials have continued to say. That's what he's doing here, because President Biden wasn't offered that opportunity when he was president-elect back in 2020 after President-elect Trump, then president at the time, fiercely fought the outcome of the 2020 election. So that'll be the presentation, at least. It's unclear what the two men will talk about, but National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan stressed in an interview with Face the Nation that the president is going to continue to talk about those world issues, everything from the Middle East, also Ukraine. That would perhaps be top of mind for President Biden to perhaps pitch to President Trump, President-elect Trump, and other lawmakers to continue to support Ukraine, because as we know, those wars continue as presidents change, Lindsay.
Willie Inman, thank you.